Can you predict the future? Okay, you may have heard this first detail before, but please stay with it. Now, World War I began on the 28th of July 1914. World War II began on the 1st of September 1939. Russia invaded the Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. Add the numbers of the date World War I began together. Do the same for World War II. And now, add the numbers of the date Russia invaded the Ukraine together. Surprising. But is there any more to this? Is there any significance to the number 68? Or to numbers in general? Do they hold any special power? Are we just curve fitting, or is there more to this? Millions think so, as I shall soon get to. So let's have a deeper look at the number 68 in history. I checked the events of 68 AD. Anything special about this? Well, yes actually. On this year, there is biblical references to the second coming none less. The appearance of God in the clouds, including lightning and earthquakes. All this before the slaughter of 20,000 people in Jerusalem. A further 20,000 died at the Battle of Vesontio, which led to Nero killing himself. Also, Saint Mark was martyred in AD 68. What about the last 1,000 years? That's a lot of ground to cover in one video, so I will go through this concisely. Here goes. The year 1068. A violent earthquake hits the Near East, with a quoted death toll yet again of 20,000. There was also the Kiev uprising of 1068, and battles in the Ukraine, including the famous Battle of Alta River. 1168. In China, the whole town of Yuankou is destroyed by a flood. In Egypt, the leader of what is now Cairo, afraid that it will be captured, orders it to be set on fire. The capital burns for 54 days. Moving on to 1268. Any earth-shattering disasters of this year? Yes, there was. The Sicilia earthquake kills over 60,000 people. As if this is not enough, 12,000 troops died at the Battle of Wesenberg in Estonia. 1368. The beginning of the Muscovite-Lithuanian Wars between the Grand Duchy of Moscow, later the Tsardom of Russia, against Lithuania allied with Poland. In this year, much of Russia was devastated, with the area around Moscow ruined and a large proportion of the citizens captured or killed. 1468. This year saw the start of not one, but two bloody wars. The Bohemian War, which raged for 10 years, the deadly Black Army caused immense death and destruction, and the Buckler War, which saw many castles, priories and towns burned to the ground. It is amazing to contemplate that many of these natural and man-made disasters are all but forgotten, only remembered by historians and researchers. As we draw closer to the 21st century, we find more detail in the written chronicles of the time period. Take 1568. How much warfare did this year witness? You may be surprised. The Battle of Langride in Scotland, which was effectively the start of the Marian Civil War. The Battle of Heligoland, which was the start of the 80 Years' War. Just to note that the 80 Years' War saw 100,000 Dutch killed and so many Spanish and Portuguese as to be unrecorded. Also, the Battle of Gemmingen. The battle alone caused over 7,000 dead or wounded. The Third War of Religion begins in France. The wars of religion killed an estimated 3 million people. The Battle of San Juan de Ulúa in the Gulf of Mexico began. The Battle of Jujuy in present-day Belgium began. And let it not be forgotten that 1568 was the start of the Russo-Turkish War between Russia under Ivan the Terrible and the Ottoman Empire allied with Crimea. Okay, let's move on to 1668. But before we discuss wars, just a couple of events to note. The 1668 Shandong earthquake in China, killing 42,578. This is the largest ever earthquake in East China. Secondly, the 1668 North Anatolia earthquake, killing 8,000 people, the largest ever earthquake in Turkey. Meanwhile, the Angelites caused destruction and death in France. Christians were uprising against the Tsar in Russia. There was civil war in Brunei and the Congo. In the Polish Cossack-Tatar War, forces from Poland, Lithuania and Turkey were fighting over control of the Ukraine. 1768. Kolivchina. Excuse my pronunciation. Any comments will be appreciated to correct me. The word koli is the name of a knife blessed in churches and used for the slaughter of animals in the Ukraine. It is estimated that there were between 100,000 and 200,000 victims. Many communities, including Old Believers, Armenians, Muslims and Greeks, completely disappeared during this uprising. The battle in one town alone, known as the Massacre of Uman, in June 1768, accounted for between 20,000 and 30,000 deaths. Also in 1768, the cataclysmic eruption of the Cotopaxi volcano in Ecuador, with a column of ash ejected into the stratosphere, estimated to be at a height of over 10 kilometres, caused mass destruction. Now 1868. The 1868 Arica earthquake caused almost complete destruction in southern Peru, claiming 25,000 lives. The resulting tsunami drove 3 ships 2,600 feet inland. Other ships were simply lost. The earthquake affected the world over, as far afield as Hawaii, Japan and Australia. Is this enough? Okay, listen to this. 1868 marked the start of the 6 Years' War in the Dominican Republic, the Boshin War in Japan, the 10 Years' War in Cuba, the Glorious Revolution in Spain, the Lares Revolt in Puerto Rico, Titicawaru's War in New Zealand, the war in Abyssinia, which is now Ethiopia, and Takuti's War, the last of the New Zealand wars. Apart from wars, dare I mention that Lake Haruka flooded in Japan, in which 940 people lost their lives. 1968. Well, for some of us, this will be in living memory, but for me, not quite. So where to begin? The year was characterised by protests, unrest and battles that caused public outcry. There was the invasion of Czechoslovakia, the many massacres in Vietnam, and the start of the insurgency in Malaysia, for example. But there are some amazing events of 1968 that could easily be forgotten. Here are 3. 1. The Arenal volcano in Costa Rica in July suddenly and violently erupted, destroying 3 villages and hurling rocks at several tons at a speed of about 1,300 miles per hour. 2. In May, a supercyclonic storm hits Burma. The death toll? 1,037. 3. The 1968 Belize earthquake in Sicily, measured extreme on the Mercalli intensity scale, and kills around 400. Okay, you may say, these are wars, natural disasters, etc. But these things are just a natural fact of life on Earth. Always were and always will be. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is anything inherently evil in numbers. Well, let's look at that again. Let's focus on people instead. Who are the most evil people in recent history? One name that is synonymous with evil is Pol Pot, who didn't just kill, but whose atrocities are such that I would not like to discuss them in detail here. Suffice to say that the Khmer Rouge caused the death of 24% of Cambodia's population. Pol Pot was born on the 19th of May 1925. Okay, but this is still war, you could easily argue. War always equals destruction. You don't have to be a mathematician to work that out. True, I say. So shall we see if there are any mass deaths in the civilian world? What is the worst case that we can find in recent history? What, even, could cause many deaths outside of war zones and huge natural disasters? How about cults? Jim Jones was the creator of the People's Temple. He brainwashed his followers in Jonestown, their community, to such an extent that after 4 investigators and 1 defector of the cult were shot dead, his followers committed mass suicide. The loss of life was 909. Was Jim Jones evil? Jim Jones was born on the 13th of May 1931. 68. In number theory, 68 is an evil number. If you don't believe me, go and look it up. Google verifies this. 68 is the last 2-digit number to appear for the first time in the digits of pi. In Goldbach's conjecture, one of the oldest and best known unsolved problems in all of mathematics, the number 68 is significant because it is the largest known number to be the sum of 2 primes in exactly 2 different ways. Unfortunately, no mathematician has as yet been able to prove this. On an infinite chessboard, there are 68 squares 3 knights moves away from any starting square. 68 decimal equals 104 octal. 104 decimal equals 68 hexadecimal. There is symmetry in this. There are exactly 68 combinationally distinct triangulations of any given triangle with 4 points interior to it. There are exactly 68 intervals in the Tamari lattice describing the ways of parenthesizing 5 items. There are exactly 68 edges in the largest graceful graph on 14 nodes. There are exactly 68 undirected graphs with no isolated nodes and 6 edges. There are exactly 68 minimally 2 connected graphs on 7 unlabeled nodes. There are exactly 68 degree sequences on 4 node unconnected graphs. There are exactly 68 matroids on 4 labelled elements. 68 has all these properties. It is definitely an unusual number. 68 decimal equals 44 hexadecimal. 68 equals 4 times 4 times 4 plus 4. Tetraphobia is the fear of the number 4. The Chinese, Korean and Japanese words for 4 sound similar to, or identical to, the word death. So 4 is avoided when numbering the floors in apartment blocks and in hospitals. Military aircraft and ships avoid the number 4. And mentioning 4 around somebody who is sick is strongly avoided. In some Italian regions, 4 means coffin, and thus the number 4 is feared there. The earliest representation of the number 4 was as a cross. Later, for speed of writing, the Arabic 4 connected the northern end to the eastern end. What do you think of when you see a cross? A symbol of death or a symbol of the Bible? As far as the Bible goes, here is what Psalm 68 says. The earth shook, the heavens also dropped at the presence of God. Even Sinai itself was moved at the presence of God. Thou, O God, didst send a plentiful rain. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of angels. O God, thou art terrible out of thy holy places. And here's Revelation 6:8. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over 1/4 of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. This brings to mind the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So what do you think? Is there any significance in numbers? Are there any patterns in fate? Any connection to our direction? Or is everything just random? Should we be fearful, for example, of the year 2068? Please comment your thoughts and watch this space. There is more to come.